Good afternoon once again and welcome to today's edition of Democracy and the Rule of Law, and we do sincerely apologize for that mix-up earlier. My name is Judith Renua, and on today's edition of the program we'll be discussing the release of the former National Security Advisor Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired and convener of the Revolution Now protest, Omoyele Sowore. They were finally released from detention last week after the initial refusal of the federal government to obey several court orders granting them bail. The one development that dominated national and political discourse in the week that just ended was the news of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, ordering the release of the former National Security Advisor and the convener of Revolution Now and publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore. Our legal practitioners are on the table, ready to discuss this issue. Over time, in the past few months, Nigerians, especially legal practitioners and other well-meaning Nigerians, have been vocal about the continuous detention of some persons by the government, despite a court order granting them bail, as the case may be. The issue of Agbajalingo, that of Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, and others have dominated national discourse. But now it came as a shock to many Nigerians when this prominent duo were finally released from the detention by federal government. It's nice to have you on the show, Barrister Shakiru Omolaja.
Thank you.
All right, Barrister Stanley Imaro, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Barrister Femi Aino, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'll start with you before I go into the reasons why the federal government, the presidency, has posited for releasing Dasuki and Omoyele Sowore. Did it come to you as a surprise? Were you expecting their release in any way, or such news when the AGF ordered to be released and they were released indeed?
It didn't come to me as a surprise.
You envisaged it?
Yes, in the sense that they ought to have been released anyway, just before now. And also, it is very important. You see, it's a sharing news in one respect, because these people have had opportunity to spend Christmas with their loved ones. But at the same time, it's a disturbing news. It is a disturbing news in the sense that why now? Why not before? With your kind permission, let's look at Dasuki and I'll give you the timeline.
All right.
Dasuki was arrested on the 29th of December 2015. That's the day he was detained. Even prior to that, there's been hue and cry here and there. And Justice Ademola, who is now retired, granted him bail sometimes in 2015 on personal recognizance, on his own personal stand. Then, on the 18th of December 2015, Justice Peter Allen of the Federal FCT High Court Abuja granted him bail again. Despite that, the federal government of Nigeria did not release him. In 2016, he approached the ECOWAS court, and the ECOWAS court granted him bail and awarded a compensation of 5 million against the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Despite that, he was not released. In 2017, Justice Hussein Yusuf of the same Federal High Court, Abuja, granted him bail, reaffirming the bail earlier granted to Dasuki, despite he was not released. Then in 2017, he was rearranged again before another judge, which is Justice Ahmed Muhammad, who took over from Justice Ademola. He himself also affirmed the bail earlier granted by retired Justice Ademola. Now, in 2018, Justice Ijeoma Ojukwu granted him bail because there was a fundamental human rights suit that was brought before the judge. Despite he was not released. That bail was subsequently varied by the Court of Appeal until the Attorney General stepped. You see, the disturbing aspect is this. Where was the Attorney General all along? Let's just be realistic. I know people are praising him and going on the rooftop and say, look, You've done well, you took over the case. But why do you have the Attorney General, the Chief Law Officer of the state?
All right, let me quickly chip in what the Attorney General said at, during an interview with the BBC Hausa and the Hausa service of the Voice of America. He did say that both men had multiple options after the court ruling, either to appeal or review the order.
No. You see, that's not the way to go. Okay. If the court asks you to, if the court grants bail, you release. Even if the bail gets revoked, either because you appeal, you are not happy or whatever, that's a different thing. You can still take them to custody. What we are seeing, you see, you can see from the timeline I've given you, bail has been granted to Dasuki on multiple occasions. And despite that, you see, the point is this. If we are wrong, it is honorable to admit that this shouldn't be. And my own concern about this Buhari administration is this. It's surrounded by lawyers. Either they are not giving him the right advice, or the members just doesn't listen. Okay. And it is high time somebody tell him the bitter truth that, look, if you continue this way, I'm going to resign from your government. In a democracy, the liberty of an individual is the supreme law of the land. We can't just be taking it and be locking people up and then wait when there is a Christmas or New Year celebration, then we release them. All right. I don't want to be proud of such Nigeria.
Okay, Barrister Stanley, you must have read the statement credited to the Attorney General of the Federation stating the reasons why these people were released. He did state that it is in commitment to the rule of law, obedience to court orders, and compassionate ground. He also went further to say it's as far as the law is concerned and in relation to the Nigerian justice system, one has multiple options. I posed the same question to Barrister. I know that after a court has ruled on a matter, you can go ahead, to appeal such judgment or review this order. I know you're one of the counsels to Omoyele Sowore. Did you toe this line when several bail conditions were flouted by the DSS and he was continually detained?
Thank you very much. I want to believe that the AGF was misquoted on the second leg of your question. Okay. You could not, the AGF could not in all righteousness ask Mr. Sowore to appeal when they have failed to comply with the order of court. It is the AGF or the government of the day, if not comfortable with the bail granted, that should go on appeal. And of course, we approach Honorable Justice Ugama when the bail conditions were imposed, onerous bail conditions, and they were varied. That's the option we had. Of course, we are still not comfortable. We have approached the Court of Appeal. The man in question, Mr. Sowore, is a journalist. That is his trade. The court, by that condition of bail, that he should be restricted to Abuja, has literally taken away his means of livelihood. We are on Court of Appeal. On that basis, he has been released. We are still on Court of Appeal, to further vary that particular onerous condition. The right to living, the right to existence, bail condition cannot take away that position. Now, for the other leg of your question, that he was released on compassionate ground, let me tell you, there was nothing they could have done in this circumstance. They were already boxed into a corner, as it were, and we have already approached the court, committed proceedings against the director of SSS. If they had not complied with the order, by now, I'm sure something funny would have happened by now, because the rule of law is no respecter of any person. They have not done him any favor by releasing him on bail. And of course, we saw they said people are celebrating the AGF. I do not understand the basis for the celebration. He's the chief law officer of the. We did a letter to him through the lead counsel, Mr. Femi Falana SCN, that he should direct the SSS to release our client. He replied by stating that it was not within his powers. And of course, in further response, we invited him to take notice of the provisions of the Constitution, in particular Section 174 and 187 of the Constitution, that says the AGF has power to direct any agency, any prosecutive agency of the federal government to comply with court order. It was not the AGF that granted the bail. It's not the federal government that granted the bail. They merely comply with the order of courts. So there's nothing to celebrate about. Of course, that is just a limited success. We are still ready for the prosecution proper, and we are ready for the defense if they are ready to start off their case. But you will recall that on the day he was rearrested, trial was supposed to commence. Prior to that date, the court had mandated the prosecution to furnish us with the proof of evidence. On that day, they came to court. There was nothing they could tell the court that they gave to us. Of course, the court awarded 100,000 naira cost against the prosecuting counsel in person. That sum has since been paid. If they have a case, let them come forward and then we move on with the case. So ordering his release or whatever semantics they use, I think it's misuse of language. They were duty bound to release him.
All right. The question we all have been asking, why not then, why now? Now let's look at, still quoting from the explanation and what the AGF did say in an interview with the BBC Hausa and also Hausa service of the Voice of America. He maintained still that the federal government has the right to keep detaining the suspect while challenging the order admitting the bail up to the apex court. As a legal practitioner, do you agree with that?
That is a tricky one.
No, okay.
Very, very tricky. We are taking note of the principle of whether an appellant should obey the judgment against him while he's gone on appeal, or whether that judgment should be disregarded. It's a very tricky one, always troubling lawyers. Now, that's what brought about the principle of maintaining the status quo. Now, if you say you are going on appeal against a judgment, normally if it were to be a civil action and there's a money sum involved, the trial court, so that it will not appear powerless, it will not appear as if it has won the veil, would order the judgment debtor to deposit the judgment sum, maybe 50 million naira or so, which is against the judgment debtor, to be deposited in an interest-yielding account while the person appeals. But in a criminal matter, where a person has been granted bail and the prosecution has approached the court to say, no, we are against the bail that has been granted. The question we are asking now, should the person who has been granted bail first be allowed to go and enjoy his bail while we pursue the appeal? Now, it is better that you err on the side of caution. What lawyers will usually tell you is this, that you shall not deny a victorious litigant the fruit of his labor. If he has been granted bail, why do you pursue your right to appeal? Let him enjoy that bail. Now remember, bail is not an exoneration, that the defendant is not guilty as charged. And also remember that constitutionally, every person charged with any form of crime is presumed innocent. And at every opportunity, I always like to say it from the rooftop, all offenses are bailable. There is no law, there is no offense, not of the Nigerian Constitution, that is not bailable. When we talk about bail offense, no, we don't talk about degree or what will be the conditions attached to the bail being granted. Suspected murderers who are standing trial have been granted bail, maybe on medical grounds or for whatever reasons. Arsonists, treasonable felony charges have attracted bail. Oftentimes in practice, bail will not be granted in heinous crimes. Maybe the person is a notorious armed robber or a serial kidnapper, a murderous kidnapper or a terrorist. They will say, look, if we were to grant this person bail, the possibility of his repeating the same crime is there. The possibility of this person tampering with the witnesses is there. The possibility of this person stalling prosecution or harassing, intimidating prosecution witnesses, all these possibilities are there. Therefore, you may not grant this person bail. But appealing, now I'm repeating myself, does not take away the fact that this person has been granted bail by a court of competent jurisdiction. Let me repeat, because it's a naughty one. The right to appeal belongs to the prosecution. And the questions you ask the two gentlemen, that the attorney general are saying that it should Sowore should have appealed or Dasuki should have appealed. I think that is insulting to intelligence of the legal profession. Why should the person who has gotten benefit or been released on bail be the person to ask? For example, what we should already be appealing against? Sometimes
they should be detained.
Those who represent government do a lot of damage to the goodwill of government. In this instance, the handlers, the legal team of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, they have not done well at all. Starting from the prosecution led by a son and the Attorney General. Sometimes it is better to keep quiet than to say things that will haunt you to your grave. What you have just said, that quotation, like my letter friend said, you are likely to have quoted that gentleman out of context. A first-year student of law will not say that. Why will I appeal when there's a judgment in my favor? No, it doesn't make sense, please. And I hope you could do a further research on this. That is likely, I'm not saying you now, maybe the media, maybe they misunderstood him, but there's no basis for more election. We want to talk so much. And Dasuki, from what Mr. Femi said, more than 5 times, successfully, he has been granted bail, even to the ECOWAS court. Yet, the government flagrantly disobeyed these court orders that portends extreme danger for our pretended democracy.
All right, I saw a very tricky one out of this comment on social media, and many people are now saying probably is the office of the AGF that has finally granted the dual bail. You know, we have footnotes from the AGF advising them to comply with the bail conditions. What do you make of that?
You see, the point is this. What I think I observe is this, because I've been in Nigeria for the last few months. I think there's what you call lack of joint thinking going on here among some of these government agencies. And where A doesn't even know what B is doing. And even if you call the attention of B to what A is doing, they just take this passive approach. You see, if you are the Attorney General of the nation, you must be able to back and bite as at when necessary. And my major concern is this. This DSS will go and pick my good brother, charge him to court. ICPC will go and pick somebody else, charge him to. I'm not saying they don't have maybe under their Establishment Act, they have the power to prosecute. But when you want to do that, you need to refer to the Attorney General of the Federation for appropriate guidance. And also, you see, and I'm glad my good brother Shakir said the government needs to be very careful, otherwise they will lose the people's goodwill if you continue this. Look at this Sowore case. How did we let it get to this stage? I'm not saying Sowore should be the president of Nigeria, but he's entitled to his liberty. There is no doubt he has offended so many people who are in power. And some of them are using this case as an excuse to get back to him. And that's why you are having this drama here and there. And also, Judith, there's something you need to be cautious of, and my brothers have not mentioned that. You see, what happened here, the release of Dasuki, the release of Sowore, good as it looks, it has a serious legal implication. And I'll tell you, Sowore was rearrested, was it not December 4 or something? On the 6th of December, thank you. He was rearrested. And the argument then was that, let's forget the drama that happened in court or whatever. The argument was that the prosecution have the power to rearrest because sometimes you charge somebody to court for this offense, and then in the process something comes to light, you realize he has committed another offense. Then you can rearrest at that point. But now, since that 6th of December, they've not even been able to charge him with another offense. Our offense is to say, look, this is what happened. And now we have this ugly situation whereby the Attorney General has now directed you that you must comply. You see, the implication is this. From that 6th of December up till the 24 or 23 when he was released, the implication is that the detention is an unlawful detention. And you see, let me even share something with you. Even where one has opportunity of practicing law apart from Nigeria, once the court grants them bail, immediately you will see the security officers calling you, look, come and sign all the papers. Within 5 minutes, they release them. even those who have been convicted, who are serving term of imprisonment. I'm telling you now, if you miscalculate their prison term and they spend a day longer in prison, they get substantial damages because the liberty of an individual. And the problem here, which I have, is this. If you know you are not going to release them, why do you oppose the bail application? You've been in court, you've raised objection to the bail application as the prosecutor that, look, these people should not be released, they are going to interfere with witnesses, they have no address, they are risk flight and what have you. You've put all those arguments, and the judge now said, look, irrespective, we can, instead of keeping them in detention, there are other ways we can address your concern. We can ask them to deposit their passport in court. So the argument about flight risk, that's out of the way. Then let them put substantial amount of money, let them come with a surety. You see, those are the mechanisms in which when court grants bail, they impose those conditions. Now, why do you do, if the court now grants them bail, then you fail to release them, then they come up with this ridiculous argument, we want all the lawyers did not come forward. Once they fail on that, they say we want all the sureties to come because we don't want, what is all that? And my concern is this: somebody somewhere needs to take responsibility for this incident, and that is the DG of the SSS and those in charge. Thank you.
All right, the federal government still stating the reasons and defending their actions has said his office did not receive any formal communication from the American senator or other pressure group. It was not because of pressure from Nigerians or any government whatsoever, including the United States government, that made them release these people. He maintained that the FG has the right to keep detaining the suspect while challenging the order admitting them to bail up to the apex court. He went further to say, even if we received any communication from them, that is the United States government or Congress, that will never be the basis on the part of the federal government to obey or disobey court orders emanating from Nigeria. Do you agree that the federal government did not actually bow to any pressure to release these people, or you're just from the magnanimity, of the AGF's office?
Thank you very much. But let me quickly address some issues raised by him.
Go ahead.
Sir, on the illegal detention till the eve of Xmas, of course, immediately you recall that the SSS applied for 90 days to remand Mr. Sowore pending investigation, but the court granted them 45 days. Yes. And then we applied to court to vacate that position. The matter was not even heard. That 45 days lapsed. They kept him in detention, promising that they were ready to arraign him, but they never arraigned him. And of course, when he was rearrested upon his release on the 5th of November, he was rearrested on the 6th. They just wanted any basis to keep him in custody. So they interrogated him over terrorism. For over 4 hours, they could not find anything. And as I said earlier, he was earlier detained pursuant to an application under the Terrorism Act. But when they arraigned him, there was no charge, any count bordering on terrorism. So this is just a confused SSS, as it were. So we are in court for enforcement of his fundamental right. For every minute he spent in detention illegally, he will be compensated, and the court will make a pronouncement on that. Now back to your question. The government came under serious pressure. Whatever you hear they say in relation to being magnanimous is just a sort of soft landing mechanism for them. Locally, civil society members, activists, and Nigerians online, the legal team on one side mounted enormous pressure on the government. The momentum was building already, and of course the icing on the cake was that desecration of the court on the 6th of December. International bodies came on board. The EU, the US, and some other lawmakers across the world, particularly the US, they joined the locals to mount pressure on the system, and eventually the federal government bowed. It was not out of goodwill. And you can't even serve justice as a matter of goodwill. They had a responsibility to release him. The momentum was already building. The country was becoming too tense, and the government was just misstepping one step after the other. You could see the contradictory statement. At the time, they said that if you release the Sowore, he will be hit by a moving vehicle. When he was released on Eve of Christmas from that facility, was he eventually hit by a moving vehicle? They said we did not come forward to release to receive him. We went there. They said no, that they needed the shorties. For what? Do you have to sit on appeal on the order of the court? They said that was their procedure, that they were not bound by whatever the court said. As a matter of fact, in their desperation to pressurize the shorty, to back out from their shorty, they stormed the court and sought to have the record of the shorty so that they could follow up on them. Of course, this court dismissed them. They said, no, you can't do that. You cannot do that. This is a democracy. It's not a monarchy. If we know we cannot work within the confines of the rule of law, of course we should suspend the constitution formally. So please, the narrative shouldn't be out of magnanimity. And the other aspect of it was that somebody said in the press that there were 4 individuals who prevailed on Mr. President to release Mr. Sowore and Mr. Dasuki. That was quite scandalous to all Nigerians. Dasuki was arrested in 2015. People advised Mr. President to keep him. And these are persons in power. He mentioned Abakari. He mentioned Think Former Aviation Minister. He mentioned the APC Governor Forum's chairman. That they were the one that prevailed on Mr. President to release this duo on Eve of Christmas. That's very insulting to us as a country. And of course, if you know the person making that particular statement, you will know there's a political statement. Perhaps he's looking for soft land. He's standing trial. So if he feels that they are magnanimous in this instance, of course, maybe the magnanimity will be extended to him and the charges against him.
I listened to the Gabashe, one of the special assistant to the president on media. He did clarify the fact that Dasuki and Sowore remained in detention on the advice of the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation, that is Abubakar Malami.
Of course, he's the chief law officer of the Federation. The ball stops on his table. He had the responsibility to advise Mr. President, but obviously he survived Mr. President.
All right.
But when it became very hot for him, he had no option that to tell Mr. President, this is wrong, this is just the way out, we just need to save our face. That was what transpired. All
right, Barrister Shakiru, what's your overview on how government has handled this particular situation, pertaining to the continuous detention despite several court orders? Did they act, well, or was the government properly advised?
The government was not properly advised. The image of the government publicly has been seriously bashed, dented, and reduced from. If we were to be a better democracy, today, the Attorney General should have been forced out of office. In honor, he should have tendered his resignation. If we had a truly vibrant, active, and responsible MBA, by now, there should be a serious pressure on the office of the Attorney General that he should resign. Being one of us, working with government, he has not represented us well. Being you never so high, the law is above you. The way the government has carried on is to give the impression that they could do whatever they want to do at their whims and caprices. That to hell with the judiciary, to hell with your judgments and your rulings. It is what we want to do. And if we have lawyers backing that, if we have lawyers tacitly or expressly approving that or supporting that, then it calls for serious regret. That why are we even having the judiciary in the first place? If you look at the body language of the learned senior of Nigeria leading the prosecution, the day Sowore was rearrested, he was publicly embarrassed. He was himself in shock. He could not explain it away, and he was rambling. I'm using my words advisedly. He was rambling. He was caught in the corner. There are some things you don't lend your name to. It is either you are for the rule of law or you are against the rule of law. If the newspaper said, well, from what we have seen, this man does not deserve to be called the president. We shall refer to his title while he was a military head of state. General, though retired. For as a general, he answered to nobody. He was law unto himself. Because for goodness sake, if you had decency, and I'm saying that with all emphasis, would you allow any lawyer to mislead you? What is the essence of having separation of powers? Even though we have said that in the principle of separation of powers, it does not mean that they cannot work together, but their water shall not be polluted by one another. Does not mean a parallel, no working together, no. But you must have your independence in such a way that it is salutary, it is enviable, no, it is enviable. But what do we have? A station where somebody has obviously goofed, and that comes with this sentimental, nonsensical explanation that it was on compassionate grounds. What compassionate grounds? If we are talking about compassion, if anybody is deserved of being released on compassionate grounds, that should be Isaac. He lost 4 of his children, or how many of them? He is said to be sick and everything. No one made the intrigue, because there's a lot of intrigue surrounding even some of these persons standing trial, whether they are truly sick or not. Isaac has also been granted bail, but this takes us back to that beautiful book written decades ago, George Orwell, Animal Farm, in which it was ended that verily all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. I want to say this very seriously, with all energy at my disposal. The government should tarry on the side of caution, should be very wary. Now, I feel insulted, honestly. I feel embarrassed that it is being suggested that because some senators from America, some congressmen from America brought pressure, now that is insulting to us, to Nigerians. When last did Nigeria interfere in the affairs of America? Would they even reckon with us? Shame unto the Attorney General, shame unto the entire country. If they were released because of that suspicious whatever intervention from America, it should be because of the pressure of the learned senior advocate of Nigeria and his legal team, the NGOs in Nigeria, and all such persons who are saying, look, the incarceration of one unfairly is the possibility of incarceration of all unfairly. The law says you have presumed the innocent. What was the crime of Sowore, for goodness sake? Did Sowore say more than some other persons have said? Did some person not say of this country that the blood of the baboon or the blood of whatever shall be sought if some persons lost the election? We should be careful. And some persons are reacting what some persons did when they were in power. And remember, whatever we all do, history is chronicling everything we are doing. And I'm saying to the man who is the president today, there will come a day tomorrow when it will be Mr. Ex-President.
All right, well, you touched the issue of El Zazaki, but we'll still come there. But before then, I listened to Garbashil on another media platform where he gave that reason, saying these people were detained further on the advice of the AGF. He also went further to quote the AGF. Initially, he said the AGF had made it clear that over time that there is a major principle of the law which says that the right of a majority and that of a community under threat overrides the right of an individual. He added that the minister took the case to a conference of the Nigerian Bar Association, adding that it was underscored by a major decision of the Supreme Court. He stressed that it was a major principle to sacrifice the freedom of one individual for that of a larger community when the need arises, pointing at the case of Dasuki and Sowore.
Well, you see, there's one thing I would just like to mention. First of all, you need to appreciate the fact that Garbashil is somebody employed to launder the image of the government. So if he approach you and say the time is 5 o'clock, I will suggest you check your wristwatch because it may be 2 o'clock. So one has to be very careful in that respect.
But with this, with this reply, has it done government right?
Yes, no, they are totally wrong. They are monumentally wrong.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Number one, he said these people were detained based on the advice of the Attorney General. You see, the question now remains: we run an open government in Nigeria. And in an open government, you know, everything, you are supposed to be transparent. If they have received this advice, if he's trying to exonerate his boss, which is the president, saying, look, the president rely on this legal advice, that's very simple. Then bring the advice forward, publish it, let us see. And then we can debate it, and other lawyers will have an opinion about that. And some of you will recall that what happened during the invasion of Iraq, that the argument by the Prime Minister in the UK then, Tony Blair, was that they received an advice from the Attorney General. And what Parliament did was that they put pressure on him that, look, publish that advice from the Attorney General. When it was published, we now realized it was, the advice was just all over the place. So there are a lot of things. We are not saying government shouldn't have secret. And we are not saying where there is a conflict between the national interest and private interest. I appreciate the fact that the national interest will override the private interest of an individual. But what we are saying is that is that a template for unlawful detention? That is the question. You see, and the problem I have with DSS and what have you, the DSS are supposed to be responsible for the internal security of the country. Since 2015, when President Buhari came to power, they are yet to bring Shikara or whatever is this Boko Haram leader, either dead or alive, to the president. If they have nothing to do, they should just leave individuals alone and concentrate on people who are importing arms into this country, people who are attacking community, causing our citizens to be displaced. You see, that is where I have issue. But let me tell you, if we are not careful about this incident, all of us will pay for it in the long run, because it undermines the integrity of the court. And the problem I have, you see, we need to seize this opportunity. Now this has happened to Sowore, it has happened to Dasuki, all of them. How do we prevent a reoccurrence? And my major concern, the whole bail system in Nigeria is very, very chaotic. Chaotic in the sense that the court grants bail, the people who are not willing to release them, and then when the court even grants bail, the court will impose this condition. I think Sowore was initially asked to pay 50 million cash into court. Well, how do you come into such a decision in the first instance? Did you see his bank statement to show that he has 50 million? Or you are just assuming things based on the graffiti of what he has been charged with? And if we are not careful, there's a cottage industry developing, and I'm glad one of his Sowore's team is here. There's a new cottage industry developing now. And if people are not cautious, I'm telling you, the prosecutor or the EFCC, all of them, they will just pick you, slam you with 800 million naira fraud, knowing fully well that when the court is going to grant you bail, they will look at the amount you've been charged with and say, okay, go and bring somebody who has 500 million. And later on, they will now amend the charge to say, oh, you only stole 100,000. You understand? Because they want to keep you in prison. And if you are not careful, some people, all this bail issue we are talking about, I can tell you, some people are making money. As soon as they call grant bail, these people will come forward. Don't worry, we can get you shorty. Is it 100 million? If you pay so amount. And it's not supposed to be. What we need to do to avoid the reoccurrence is this. Even in the UK, we have what is called bail hostel. Some people, because of, life has been unfortunate to them, they have no relative who can stand shorty. But there's a bail hostel, because of their liberty, the court grants them bail and say, go and stay in that bail hostel. You can go out, but you must be back in by 8 p.m. That is another way to go to avoid all this sort of issue. And if anybody wants to stand as a shorty, the best person, I've said this before and I'm repeating it, the best person to stand as a shorty is the wife of the accused person. Because number one, the accused person will want the wife to go to prison. And the wife will be able to say, don't forget, tomorrow is your court. You understand? So, and it's not about money. Money doesn't make people comply with bail. You understand? And in this Sowore case, Sowore is an American citizen, come what may. I don't know, it's up to his legal team. If it's me, I'll just say, look, these people have violated my right. Should this matter be decided in another jurisdiction, I'm telling you, sometimes for a detention in a day can amount to $1,000. Can you imagine somebody being detained unlawfully for 4 years?
Whoa. All right, you're still watching Democracy and the Rule of Law. We'll take a very quick break. I'll be back to continue the discussion. Just stay with us and don't go anywhere. All right, you're welcome. And if you're just joining us, this is Democracy and the Rule of Law, and we are discussing the release of Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired. There is a former National Security Advisor and the convener and publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore. Thank you once again for joining us. Barrister Stanley, let me quickly go to you. The release of Dasuki and Sowore is making many people also ask, why not release others who are still in detention despite several court orders granting them bail? And one person who stands prominent is Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, the leader of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria. But the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice has also said the cleric is being tried under the Kaduna state law and not the federal law. And as it is now, his case is different from Omoyele Sowore and that of Dasuki. And it can be decided by the Kaduna state government if he will be released or if the court's order granting him bail will be obeyed. What do you make of this?
Yes, thank you very much. But before I come to that, your questions, you raise the question you asked him is very serious question on issue of national security vis-a-vis. And let me quickly correct an impression also that Sowore is a citizen of.
No, he's not.
That is not correct. Yeah, I'm aware. Yes, I'm aware he has lived there for almost 20 years, and that because of his exploits, the system there, they wanted him to be citizen. He has turned them down on several occasions, and they said he's in Nigeria and he believes that things can happen here in Nigeria and will make Nigeria a better place. For the wife, yes. I understand the wife is a citizen, but for him as a person, I'm not aware that he's a citizen. But on that national question, national security question, you see, that's the fallacy that has been gaining ground, that national security supersedes individual rights. The question you ask first and foremost is, who determines national security? They said Sowore wanted to overthrow the government of Muhammadu Buhari. That was quote unquote threat in their own understanding to national security. They arrested him, they arraigned him, and the court granted him bail. Yet the executive said they will not release him based on national security. The court has determined it as it were, that yes, notwithstanding that you charge this person for treasonable felony or whatever offense, we are granting him bail, not exonerating him. Would you say because of the phrase national security, you will not comply with that court order? The president was misadvised by the AGF when he appeared at the national NBA conference and submitted that they were going to disobey court order based on the case of this Niger Delta militant against the FGN, that the Supreme Court in that case declared that once the right of an individual conflicts with that of the national interest, the national interest supersedes. And that was total misapplication of the principle stated in that case. It was the court that decided that. I wonder if you will forgive Mr. President for that. He was misadvised. There is nothing that says that national security supersedes individual right. Once as an executive you have decided that there is threat to national security and you surrender to the court, and the court looks at your charges and said, okay, we grant this person bail or we exonerate this person based on your charges. That has answered the question. You cannot just, it's not for Mr. President to sit in the comfort of his office or the AGF to decide that national security is under threat. And when the court says, okay, we are granting him bail, you will still insist that national security. It doesn't work like that. The judiciary has determined what national security is in that case.
All right.
So that is a court judgment, not executive fiat. Yes. Right. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's not for the president to now say, okay, based on that case, anything that borders national security, there will be no bail. That is not what the principle in that case stated.
Right.
Now to your question as to Zaki and
Kaduna State government.
Yeah, Kaduna State government. Of course, we must not forget Mr. Jalingo, who's been who's been harassed by the Cross River State government. The Sowore was released. Dasuki was released on the eve of the Christmas. Then people are saying, what happens to other detainees, prisoners of conscience? I think that's the best way to describe it. Then the AGF has responded that it is the Kaduna State government. You will recall that before now, court granted Dasuki bail, but the federal government, under the supervision of this AGF, Malami, is advised disobey the court order. You will equally recall that even Dasuki was granted there as he was leaving the correctional center, he was rearrested. Now, the man in question was charged for murder, I think, in Kaduna State. There's no way the federal government is working in synergy with the Kaduna State government. The other Jalingo's case, if you check the charge sheet, it is Federal Republic of Nigeria against that young man. It's not Cross River State against Abba Jalingo. It's Federal Republic of Nigeria against, and you have federal charges therein. That is localized, and the court that is being tried is Federal High Court. So I think the federal government is playing hide and seek in this instance. What is important is, whoever is prosecuting anybody, the rule of law has to be obeyed. And we must not forget also, notwithstanding the painting of that by Jalingo's case, the PDP, the opposition party, really need to come out and advise the governor of Cross River State, Mr. Ayade, if they could criticize, if they could join others, the presidential candidate, Atiku and the rest, in mounting pressure on Mr. President to comply with court order and stop harassing people based on their belief and their political belief and stance. They should equally mount pressure on the governor of Cross River State. The charges against Abba Jalingo that he wants to overthrow the government of Cross River State. How can an individual overthrow a state government? Where will he attend the national executive meeting? So there are funny charges, but we understand that he was arrested simply because he criticized the government for mismanaging about 500 million naira budgeted for poultry farm. That is the basis for his arraignment. All right. Nothing more, nothing less.
All right, Mr. Shakiru, on the Zaki issue and his fate hanging in the hands of the state government.
I think the learned Attorney General may be accused of being guilty of double talk, double standard, and hypocrisy. I will look at it from this point of view. When the court granted Zaki bail, permission to go to India to go and treat himself, was it the Kaduna State government that provided the SSS and all the security and the state craft, the aircraft that went to India
with him,
with Zaki? Were we not seeing the voice of Jacob and the hand of Esau, where we say, yes, it is that tall man, every fight that is holding him, but it is the federal government that is innocent. We are not so stupid, please. The federal government of Nigeria is effectively incarcerating Zaki. And don't forget, just yesterday, there was yet another protest by members of the group, in which yet another valuable life was lost. This is not to suggest, and this is not to support whatever violence some of his members seem to be always resorting to. Because if you were not out on a suicide mission, why would you be hurling stones, bottles, or whatever, at men who were armed, who were having like bullets? For goodness sake, but that's not what we are discussing. So to simply answer your question, I am not fooled. The average lawyer will not be fooled. Because when you look at the tremendous powers of the Attorney General of the Federation, he has the power to take over any criminal prosecution in any part of the country.
All right.
So that distinction, I think, is a little mischievous. When they want to deal with you, they make a distinction between state laws and criminal laws. But for some intelligent lawyers, they will tell you, any law that is inconsistent with any provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that's section 3 of the Constitution, that law shall be void to the extent of inconsistency. So if a state law is violating the rights of a citizen, then you can be sure that such a state law will be done away with for the sake of the supremacy of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So tell the Honorable Attorney General to tell the story to the birds. That's the story for the Marines, not for Nigerians who are saying, look, nobody supported whatever extremities, whatever exaggerations, whatever extreme violence the Dansuki group were onto. But remember, if anything should be properly handled, and should be handled in the most delicate manner, because the Dansuki issue borders on religion.
All right, thank you very much. Very careful. Thank you very much. All right,
just quickly, there was an incident in Ibadan during the Jonathan era when one of these road transport leader, the man was murdered, and the Senate Majority Leader then, Yink Folarin is his name, from Ibadan, he was charged to court by the state, and the Attorney General then took over the case. And thereafter, he discontinued the case, despite the fact that
that's the Federal Attorney General took over the state case.
Yes, exactly. That took over the state case. So this idea that it boils down to Kaduna State government has no standing. That's
all right, your final words on the show for wrap up our time spent.
Since we are not running a monarchy, we expect the federal government or even the state government to abide with the rule of law. There is no point flexing muscles unnecessary. This government and the DSS in particular have been damaged largely by the incidents of the Sowore, the way they mismanage it and mismanage the Dasukis case. How could you keep somebody in detention since 2015 and you are claiming today that out of magnanimity you have decided to release it? The momentum was building locally and they saw it, they felt it was time to call it quit. That was why they complied with that order. And we expect that same will apply to Ezakazi and of course Abadalingo and other prisoners of conscience across the Federation.